I can climb a tree all day on the zigzag, but then I'm not going to come back the next day and do it again. But on a stationary rope system, if I'm just using my legs all day long, I can come back the next day and do it again because it wasn't such a stress on my body, which is kind of the point. Is you want to be able to do this all day, every day, for years and decades, and you can't do that just by hip thrusting. It's impossible. I've tried it. It doesn't work. I like to demonstrate the motion of the ascent method, so I will. Typically, well, nowadays there's many ways you can do it, but nowadays we call it rope walking because it's literally just stepping like this, and then you can use your hands too. But if you're missing your knee ascender, you can also just use the 1 foot method. Tomorrow afternoon, we're going to do this. For smaller ascents. For those long ascents, if you're climbing redwoods and you got to go up 100 feet at a time, you want to engage those muscle groups and not use your arms because you're going to have to use those for other things. Use your legs. And, that's even if you just use stationary ropes to get in the tree, you can always convert over to your favorite climbing system. It doesn't have to, you're not stuck with it. If you just use it to make that initial ascent, that's already a huge plus because you don't have to use all your energy just to get in the tree. You can, do your thing and then switch over and work the tree. All right. Is there any questions on ascent methods? Okay. When we do the field demonstration, when it's 20 degrees outside, you'll kind of see what I'm talking about.
One thing that might help us to know how much a complete SRT kit costs, like that foot ascender.
Oh, good question.
You start adding those fees up, and what do you end up at, Ryan?
Well, if I was just to go out and get a rope, some hitch cord, pulley, saddle, we'll leave the saddle out of it. If I just want to get you in a tree today, I could probably get you in a tree for $150. Right? A rope and some stuff. You don't even need a hitch cord. Use a Blake's hitch. But now you add in a foot ascender, $100 there. You got a knee ascender, that's $150. It gets kind of pricey once you get up there, but those are usually one-time purchases. Like the foot ascender will last you 10 years or longer. Too, and the knee ascender, you might have to change out some bungee cord once in a while, but it can be inexpensive, but it does, your budget does feel it a little bit. And then, heaven forbid, you lose one. So this is actually my fourth death step. I have 2, but this is my 4th one. The ropes are the same price, no matter what system you use. If you're climbing on moving rope systems, you're probably going to have a rope saver, a cambium saver with you. So, it's another $150. But with stationary rope systems, you don't need that. You just need a nice steel carabiner or a notch quickie, which isn't that expensive. And so, some ways you do save a little bit of money doing that. But there is a huge gear investment and a training investment too. It's tree climbing, but it's totally different than you probably learned how to do. It's totally different than I learned how to do. And it takes years to get those motions down sometimes, especially if you don't do it every day. Like I don't climb, I shear shrubs too, right? And grind stumps. So it can take a couple of years to get used to that, but it's worth it. It's worth all your time because you're saving all that energy, and when you get good at it, you're saving all that time too. Being able to throw a rope at a tree and get going versus having to struggle to, like spike up the stem or something and throw ropes around and stuff. Did that kind of answer that? Yeah, there's a gear investment for sure. So I got the foot ascender. That's one of the things that you need. There's a jet step. It's got these 2 cams in there, which is unique to this model of foot ascender. Usually there's just 1 cam, and I just like it. It's really slim. the rope doesn't pop out like you think it would unless your technique is a little off. But that comes with the practice. And it's, you know, it's cheaper than the pencil version, I think, so it's a good one to start out with. But like I said, there's 20 or 25 different types of foot ascenders, all the way from Amazon brand to, you know, Petzl, DMM, all that stuff, CT. They all have good stuff, and they're all the same. It's not life support, so you don't have to worry really too much about, you know, how well it's put together. It's just to aid your ascent into the tree. And that's every ascent too, whether you're going up a couple feet, you can use the foot ascender. That's why I like this one, because you can just pop it in and out, or 100-foot ascents. You can clip all that stuff on and just get going and not stop until you're at the top. Knee ascender too, you're gonna need one of those with stationary rope systems, especially if you're going more than 30 feet. You know, a lot of times it's personal preference. And there's different varieties. I tend to go with the Saka, which is the self-advancing knee ascender. It's just the name, they're all the same. There's the Haas too, which is the all-ass ascension system. And they all work the same, but you need those so you can use both of your legs to propel yourself instead of just one. And there's, you know, 10 different types of knee ascenders, and you can make your own too. And all right, so show and tell is my favorite part of the top. There's so many different types of devices out there on the market right now. 10 years ago, it was the rope wrench, and then whatever hitch cord you had in your gear bag at the time. Now we got, like, you know, the Rope Runner Pro, which is a really nice device. It's adjustable. And there's a point I wanted to make about these too. It's more of a what you feel is your personal preference as a climber. This is about the size of like a hitch climber with the hitch climber pulley with your hitch cord, and it's pretty small. You know, if you wanted to sink yourself up to the trunk of a tree or a branch, you could. You could get pretty close. But then you got bigger stuff, like if you were to add a rope wrench to this, or the Rope Runner Pro, these things can be quite bulky just because of how they function. So sometimes that's difficult to work around, but it's like, you know, does the outhouse smell good or not? It doesn't matter, you're gonna use it anyway. So, the Rope Runner Pro, really smooth, really nice to work with. There's a little bit of sit back, which is that phenomenon that happens when you put your weight on your climbing system and everything kind of flexes until it gets tight. There's a little bit of sit back in these bigger devices. And then you have stuff like the Kimbo, which is back to really small, hardly any sit back. You can get real close to the tree. And this is, you know, what you want to use is your personal preference. When I'm removing trees, I go for the small one because sometimes I need to get close to that spar, and I want to be able to engage the suspension on my saddle. So I'll use a smaller device, but if I'm pruning, I'll go for that zigzag and chicane if I can find it in the gear bag before I find something else, because it's big and bulky and floppy, but if all you're doing is pruning and you're not getting close to trunks or tree branches and you're setting it up once and pruning a tree, it's like the Cadillac of devices, right? Zigzag as smooth as it gets. And it's user-friendly too, because it works just like your normal hitch cord would, except for it's metal. So totally personal preference. They're all good devices. And there's a couple more on here. The Unisender is a little bit different, the way it operates. Here's that zigzag chicane. This is going to be your rope wrench up here, and then your normal zigzag or hitch climber pulley, whatever you want, your favorite climbing system. But it's very big and bulky, so one of those things to pay attention to. It ain't like the traditional moving rope systems where you can do just about anything. You gotta be kind of careful with these. And there's some sit back on some of these, and also clearance issues. You know, you can't really get close to the tree like this. You gotta have to slack it, put some slack into it, and then you can get up there. But like the akimbo, you don't have to do that. And it's pretty small, relatively no slip. And then you don't have to always go with full mechanical stuff. Like I said, back in the day, they just had the rope wrench, the original rope wrench, and whatever hitch cord you had. They also have like the hitch hiker, which I use on my captain's hook, just because I can squish it together in my gear drag and never use it. So it's got a mechanical component plus a cordage component as well. So personal preference for the tree climber. There's so many options for what you can use for your climbing device. And they all work pretty well too, depending on how much experience you have with them. A lot of times, and we all know this with hitch cordages, is they can bind up. So I've since made the transition personally to the mechanical devices because they don't have that issue of binding up with the ropes. The only other thing is you have to inspect them and pay attention to them like you would any other metallic hardware like carabiners, so you gotta make sure there's no cracks, no burrs to cut your rope on. You gotta make sure that all the components open and close like they should. Which is, another thing that you gotta relearn is, or that you gotta learn is, how do I make sure that these devices won't fail me the next time I use them. Which you don't really have to do with cordage that often because you just kind of look at it and you can see if it's cut or not.
Hey Ryan, the clash where different pieces of equipment can cause problems, right? I mean, I've heard of people where their device was actuated by a branch or by another device.
Oh yeah. And that also happens with any climbing system. You might bump into your climbing hitch, your friction hitch, and then it could become active, and then you might experience a little bit of a fall. But you can do that with the stationary rope system devices too, because there's usually 2 points of contact, and one of them is going to be some kind of bollard that adjusts and controls your friction, and something that takes the majority of force off of that bollard and puts it on the device. So you can kind of sometimes accidentally hit these things and then experience a little bit of a free fall for a couple inches, and which is incredibly creepy, but it does happen. So I think that's just part of the regular protocol for tree climbing, is you just have to be aware of where your gear is at the time, and it goes with this stuff or with a Blake's hitch or a hitch climber pulley and hitch cord. Same stuff. You just gotta be aware as a tree climber. And there's more too. There's something called the bulldog bone. I don't know if you guys heard of that. It's kind of like the akimbo. So many things to experiment with, and everybody likes something different. Hector, he likes the rope wrench or the rope runner pro. So I had to buy 2 because I also like it. And then the akimbo. I got 2 of them because sometimes somebody wants to borrow one, and I also like it. Or the one. But everybody likes something a little bit better than the other stuff, but they all work just great. I've climbed on everything, all the mainstream products on the market, and they're all great once they break. There is some break-in time with some of the mechanical devices. Here's a good photo of one of the rope wrench tethers you can get. So you got the rope wrench up there at the top, just above where your hitch is going to be. In this one, it's a zigzag, so fully mechanical. And then this is just the tether that connects the two. So there's options for that too. You can get the rope style, or you can go with a stiff one, something metal, aluminum, or of course Pencil makes their chicane. So this is just a version of that rope wrench and tether that's specific to the zigzag, and they all work. All right, I'm going to show you some pictures of jobs that I've done and how I kind of set up these systems. And we are near the end, so I'm going to buzz through this because I do have bonus material. Here's a tree with one hellacious dog leg in it. It's not a very tall tree, but if you can imagine trying to hip thrust up 30 feet, nah, you're not gonna do that. But you could try to throw your rope over a branch, hip thrust up 10 feet, you know, lanyard in and try to throw it up again. We're not gonna do that. So instead I just threw my rope up, way up here in the canopy, hangs down exactly where I want it to, right over the center of the tree. I do that from the ground, and all I have to do is ascend my rope up, get to work on whatever I'm doing, and then since it's retrievable, I can just pull it out when I'm done. I don't have to even go up to my tying point if I don't have to. Here's another example of, you know, I just want to get my rope in the tree and cut that one branch off that I have to climb to get. So I just threw a rope up and a rigging rope over one branch, down to where I'm going to need to be making this cut, this branch off from the groove. Here's a close-up. So I got my canopy anchor right here, my climbing rope and my rigging rope just a little bit toward the tip of that branch. I set it all up from the ground. All I had to do was climb up there, tie stuff off, make my cuts. I didn't have to go climb up here to set my tying points or my rigging points. I just did it all from the ground. And went up there, did my job, and came back down. Didn't have to spend any of that extra time or effort. Another maple tree, and I know it's street side. I don't have a bucket truck though, so I climb it. This is one of those trees where you got all these stems that you got to go up and down, and that can be a little bit cumbersome. It takes a lot of energy to do that. But all I did was toss my rope up. I captured a nice union right in the center. It doesn't even have to be a union. It can be around the middle of the stem somewhere, right? Because that anchor point can cinch, you can put it in the middle of the stem if you want. You don't actually have to be on a branch even, as long as it's stable and appropriate for what you're going to be doing. And that's what I did here. It's just somewhere on a branch in the middle of a tree. It didn't necessarily need to be anywhere specific, but just so I could get access to that whole canopy without having to climb up there and set all that stuff up manually. Sometimes you need, something a little extra to get that throw ball up, 80 feet, 60 feet. So sometimes you use a slingshot to do that. And then you use that throw line just like you would with anything else to pull your rope through. Attach your rope to it and pull all that stuff through. And in this particular job, we're just removing that one limb going over the basketball hoop. This one. So all I need to do is get access to this limb. But here's the tree. Right? This is a big old tree, and it's kind of hard to tell with that wide angle. But this is like on the order of 80 to 90 feet tall. I want to tie in right here because that's right over the limb I'm cutting off. But I don't want to climb up all the way up this tree or hip thrust all the way up this tree to get my work position. All I did was slingshot myself over this branch. I did the same with the rigging. These are 10-inch cottonwood limbs about this point, maybe even a little bit larger, so I'm not really worried about hurting the tree so much. Set up my anchor, and I just get up and I go straight to the limb, and I'm right there. Huge benefit with that. I didn't have to do any extra work. And you can actually see, maybe, the screen's a little bit light, but I actually had to add tail to my rope to get it all the way from here up over this limb and back down with enough rope. I had to tie 2 ropes together. But you wouldn't be able to do that with the moving rope system. You have to have a long enough rope to get all the way back down to the ground. With stationary ropes, you can tie ropes together too. And